Hi there, historians! We've been learning for a while now about growing tensions between American colonists and the British government. Colonists believed the government had passed unjust laws and violated their natural rights. They found a variety of ways to communicate their grievances to government officials back in England, and had begun using propaganda to convince other colonists to join their cause. Today, we'll learn about Parliament's punishment of the city of Boston after the Boston Tea Party and the consequences of the actions Parliament took. Our objectives are to describe the causes, contents, and consequences of the Coercive Acts, describe actions taken by the First Continental Congress to communicate with the British government, and to summarize the course and consequences of the battles of Lexington and Concord. After the Boston Tea Party and spreading anti-government protests throughout the colonies, Parliament passed a series of laws called the Coercive Acts in the spring of 1774. They were aimed at punishing the city of Boston for the rebelling of many of its citizens, including the Sons of Liberty. First, the Boston Port Act closed the Boston harbor indefinitely until colonists paid for the tea that was destroyed. Second, the Massachusetts Government Act disbanded the Massachusetts Assembly and made it very difficult for town meetings to take place anywhere in the colony. Third, the Administration of Justice Act allowed government officials accused of crimes to be tried in other colonies or back in England, making it very difficult for American witnesses to attend the trial. Plus, the English jury would probably be more favorable. Fourth, more troops were sent to Boston. Another quartering act required housing for these soldiers to be paid for by colonists. And lastly, in a later Parliament session, they passed the Quebec Act, which granted Ohio lands to northern colonies which were not in rebellion. This voided any future land claims rebellious colonists may have had their hearts set on in the region they had fought for during the French and Indian War. What do you think about these punishments? Do you think they are a reasonable response to the vandalism and destruction that took place during the Boston Tea Party? Write or draw your thoughts in your notes. Colonists were very upset about the new laws, even those not from Massachusetts. The Coercive Acts again restricted colonists' natural rights, and many saw them as unlawful. Richard Henry Lee of Virginia called them
the most wicked system for destroying the liberty of America.
Whatever the intended effect Parliament had for these laws, the biggest impact was to unite people from around the 13 rebellious colonies in hatred of cruel and unusual punishments. Have you ever felt upset about a punishment? So were they, but patriots had a plan. Again, turning to propaganda, patriots nicknamed the new laws the Intolerable Acts. A secret network of people who wrote letters across the colonies, known as the Committees of Correspondence, arranged for a meeting to take place in Philadelphia in the fall of 1774. 56 delegates, more than twice as many as the group who attended the Stamp Act Congress, from 12 out of 13 colonies, met in Carpenter's Hall throughout September and October. The First Continental Congress was far from united. Some representatives expressed sympathy for Boston and agreed that the Coercive Acts were indeed intolerable. But others, like John Dickinson of Pennsylvania and John Jay of New York, believed that colonial actions pressuring Parliament to repeal laws were unreasonable. They said the people of Boston had taken things too far. Delegates debated for 6 weeks. In that time, they adopted the Suffolk Resolves, previously written in Massachusetts, which included a declaration of grievances focusing on many of the same complaints colonists had all along, which now included the Coercive Acts. It encouraged boycotting in all 13 colonies, and for each colony to establish and begin training a militia, or volunteer defensive army. By the end of the meeting, John Adams wrote and the Congress adopted the Declaration of Rights. It included a Bill of Rights, another list of grievances, and laid out a more specific plan moving forward. It addressed colonial assemblies, created a specific plan for a widespread boycott of all taxed British goods, and included a petition to the king to repeal many laws that colonists were unhappy with. A final measure they agreed to was to meet again the following year if their demands were not met. As a result of the Coercive Acts, a new royal governor was appointed for Massachusetts. For the job, the king chose Thomas Gage, the military commander-in-chief in North America. Okay, what kind of signal does that send? Not a good one. In response to Gage's enforcement of the Intolerable Acts, patriots formed their own government, the Massachusetts Provincial Congress. It began stockpiling weapons and training a militia. Governor Gage heard about the militia and its weapons through a network of informants. With this intelligence, Gage began making secret plans for small strikes targeting patriot militias. But colonists had an intelligence system of their own, with informants such as Dr. Joseph Warren, a son of liberty who had sources in Gage's inner circle. This may have even included Margaret Kemble Gage, the governor's wife. Some historians suspect she may have favored the Patriots and wanted to help them. Warren's information revealed that Gage intended to send troops to a nearby town, Lexington. There, they would arrest Samuel Adams and John Hancock, local Patriot leaders, before moving on to Concord to seize or take the militia's weapons. The Patriots made a plan in which Paul Revere and other messengers would be alerted by lanterns in the Old North Church that the British were coming. When they saw the signal, they rode through the night to notify people in Lexington and Concord. Members of the militia trained to be ready at a moment's notice, known as Minutemen, arrived in Lexington before the soldiers. Stalling them would give people in Concord more time to hide their weapons. Around 700 redcoats met a colonial force of under 80 men. In a tense 10-minute standoff, colonists feared death, while redcoats feared another incident. In the confusion, someone fired the shot heard round the world, which some people mark as the beginning of the War for Independence. After one volley of shots from each side, the British Army advanced with bayonets, which are sharp knives affixed to the ends of their muskets. Colonists dispersed, and the redcoats moved on to Concord. By the time they arrived, most of the weapons had been hidden. 400 Minutemen were waiting for them on rooftops, inside buildings, and in the woods. The British forces broke ranks as they searched for the weapons. Patriots engaged a force of only 100 men on the North Bridge. They fled and returned to the larger group, who had completed its search. Not finding any weapons, the redcoats began a retreat back to Boston. As they did so, Minutemen hidden in the woods fired at them all the way back for 20 miles. That day, Gage's army suffered almost 300 casualties, compared to the colonists' 100. The battles of Lexington and Concord opened the engagement of British troops against their own people, signaling to many that a full-scale civil war was coming. And of course, because the weapons were never taken, colonists would use these battles as propaganda, showing that colonists could stand up to the king's men. In 1774, rather than taking steps to smooth things over after the Boston Tea Party, Parliament passed laws to punish colonists in Boston and send a message to protesters throughout the continent. The plan backfired, as colonists spread boycotts to their highest levels and created an assembly of delegates from 12 colonies, which agreed to form militias, declare their grievances, and petition the king. Shortly afterward, an armed conflict erupted outside Boston as Governor Thomas Gage attempted to stamp out the rebellion. He hoped to arrest Patriot leaders in Lexington and seize a weapons cache in Concord. Instead, the Patriot militia held their ground, winning a symbolic victory. This inspired many colonists to join the Patriot cause. The incident moved the two sides closer to war. As we continue our study of the American Revolution, look for further attempts by the Continental Congress to fix things with the British government. And pay attention to how the king responds to their pleas for peace. Until next time, historians, remember to always be clever.